Rain poured relentlessly that night, turning the city streets into rivers of shimmering regret. Inside a mansion built on arrogance and deceit, Ethan Cole stood face to face with his wife, Lila, her trembling hands resting on her swollen belly. Her eyes, once soft with love, now held only disbelief. "You're leaving me? Now?" "When I'm carrying your child," she whispered, her voice barely louder than the thunder outside. Ethan's jaw clenched. "You've turned weak, Lila. I need a woman who understands me. Someone like her." Her heart cracked. That was the mistress, Vanessa, a woman whose beauty was sharp enough to wound and whose ambition burned brighter than any conscience. Lila staggered back as Ethan's anger rose. Words turned to shouts, shouts turned to chaos, and in one cruel motion of rage and impulse, he pushed her. She fell. The world blurred into screams and pain. Then, silence. When Ethan realized what he'd done, it was too late. She was rushed to the hospital, but the doctors' faces told him everything. "The baby didn't make it," they said. "She lost too much blood. We couldn't save them." Ethan's life spiraled after that. Vanessa left within months, taking with her the last illusion of love he thought he had. His empire began to crumble. Partners withdrew, employees whispered, and guilt haunted every breath he took. 3 years passed, each day punishing him with the echo of what he destroyed. Until one afternoon, in the middle of an ordinary, suffocating day, fate turned cruel again. Ethan was stepping out of his car, adjusting his cufflinks, when a small voice called out from the park across the street. A child's laughter, bright, innocent, and hauntingly familiar. He turned. There, by the swings, stood a young boy chasing a ball, and for a heartbeat, Ethan forgot to breathe. The boy's face. It was his. Same dark eyes. Same sharp nose. Even the tiny dimple that appeared when he smiled. Ethan's chest tightened as he stumbled closer, his mind spinning. The boy's caretaker turned to pick up a fallen toy, and in that moment, Ethan froze. It was her. Lila. She looked older, wearier, but alive. Her eyes caught his from across the playground. Time stopped. Every sound, every movement, every memory vanished. There was only that stare, filled with fury, fear, and something deeper, something like triumph. Ethan's lips parted, but no words came out. His world, the one he'd built from lies, began to crumble again. The boy ran to her, hugging her legs. "Mommy. I got the ball." Ethan's heart thundered in his chest. "Mommy. Mommy." Lila smiled faintly at her son, then turned her gaze back to Ethan. For the first time in 3 years, she spoke to him, calm, measured, and unshaken. "You buried us, Ethan," she said softly. "But not everything you bury stays dead." Ethan felt his knees weaken as realization hit him like a storm. She had survived, and so had the child. But why? Why hide? Lila turned away, taking the boy's hand, ready to leave. Panic surged through him. He took a step forward. "Lila, wait." The boy glanced back one more time, those same eyes meeting his, before disappearing with her into the crowd. Ethan stood frozen in the rain, his reflection rippling in a puddle at his feet. His sins had returned in flesh and blood. And for the first time in years, he realized, this story wasn't over. Because he was going to find out everything, no matter the cost. Ethan couldn't sleep that night. His mind replayed the moment again and again, the boy's face, that fleeting smile, the unmistakable resemblance. Every detail was etched into his brain like a brand of guilt and disbelief. He poured himself a glass of whiskey, though it did little to calm the tremor in his hands. The city outside his penthouse window buzzed with life, but inside, everything was still, except for the storm raging in his chest. He told himself it wasn't possible. It couldn't be. The hospital had confirmed the death. He'd seen the empty eyes of the doctor, heard the sterile sympathy in their voices. He'd buried that chapter. But then again, he'd buried her too. And yet she lived. By morning, Ethan was already in motion. He didn't shave, didn't eat. He called in favors, old contacts, people who still owed him loyalty. Within hours, he had a name, Riverside Community School, where the boy, Noah, was enrolled. Noah. The name hit him like a whisper from another life. He remembered Lila once saying, "If it's a boy, I want to call him Noah. It means rest, comfort." The irony almost made him laugh. He parked a few blocks away from the school and watched from his car. Children ran through the gates, their laughter echoing. Then he saw them. Lila walked hand in hand with the boy, her smile soft, her expression peaceful, a peace he'd never given her. Her clothes were simple, her life clearly modest, yet she carried herself with quiet strength, as if she had rebuilt herself from ashes. When the bell rang and she waved goodbye to Noah, Ethan got out of the car. His pulse quickened as he crossed the street. "Lila," he called. She turned sharply, the color draining from her face. For a moment, they both just stood there, years of buried emotion between them. "What are you doing here?" she asked finally, her voice calm but cold. "I had to see you," Ethan said, struggling to steady his tone. "I thought you were gone. They told me." "They told you what you wanted to hear," she cut in sharply. "And you didn't ask questions, did you?" Ethan's throat tightened. "I thought you were dead. I thought he was." "Don't," she snapped. "You lost the right to speak about him the night you chose her over us." Her words sliced through him. He stepped closer, his eyes flicking toward the school gate. "He's my son, Lila. You can't hide that from me." "You're right," she said quietly. "He is your son. But he doesn't need to know that." Ethan's breath caught. "You can't keep me away from him." "I can," she said. "And I will." The finality in her voice hit him harder than he expected. She turned to walk away, but Ethan reached out, grabbing her arm before he could stop himself. The moment his fingers touched her, she froze, then turned slowly, eyes dark with the memory of everything he'd done. "Let go," she said softly, but with such command that it made him release her instantly. He watched her walk away, her figure dissolving into the crowd once more, leaving him standing there like a ghost in daylight. That night, he couldn't stay away. He found himself parked outside a small, run-down apartment complex on the edge of the city. Lila's light was on. Through the window, he could see Noah sitting at the table, drawing something. Lila leaned over him, smiling, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear. For the first time in years, Ethan saw what peace looked like, and it hurt. Then Noah held up the drawing to show her, and Ethan could see from where he sat, it was a sketch of a family. A woman, a boy, and a man. The man's face was only half drawn, faint, unfinished, as if Noah wasn't sure who he was supposed to be. Ethan's vision blurred. He rested his head against the steering wheel, the sound of his heartbeat drowning out the city. Days turned into weeks. Ethan started following them, not out of malice, but desperation. He watched Noah at the park, at school, at home. The boy was bright, polite, curious, everything Ethan had hoped his son would be. Every time Noah laughed, a small piece of Ethan's armor cracked. He wanted to approach him. To tell him the truth. But every time he tried, Lila appeared, always alert, always watching, like she knew he was there. Then one day, something changed. Noah had stayed late after school for art class. The rain had started to pour, and most of the children had already left. Ethan sat in his car, waiting, when he saw Noah come running out, his little backpack soaked through. He was alone. Without thinking, Ethan got out and ran to him, his umbrella barely shielding them from the downpour. "Hey, slow down," Ethan said, kneeling to the boy's level. "You'll catch a cold." Noah blinked up at him, surprised but not afraid. "I missed the bus," he said softly. Ethan smiled faintly. "I can walk you home if you'd like." Noah hesitated, then nodded. As they walked, Ethan found himself asking simple questions, about school, about his favorite subjects, his drawings. Noah talked freely, animated, his words bright and full of innocence. When they reached the apartment, Lila was already outside, panic on her face. The moment she saw them together, her expression turned to fury. "What are you doing?" she shouted, rushing to Noah and pulling him close. "You followed him? Are you out of your mind?" "Lila, he was alone," Ethan tried to explain. "I didn't mean. Don't you dare come near him again," she screamed. "You've done enough." Noah looked between them, confused. "Mommy, do you know him?" The world seemed to stop. Lila froze, her lips trembling. Ethan met her gaze, silent, pleading. She forced a smile for Noah. "Just, someone Mommy used to know." Ethan's heart sank as she turned away, ushering Noah inside and slamming the door behind her. That night, Lila sat awake, staring at the small bed where Noah slept peacefully. She knew Ethan wouldn't stop. And deep down, part of her, the part that still remembered the man she once loved, feared what would happen when their worlds collided again. Because she had her own secret. The night she died, she hadn't just run. Someone had helped her. A man, quiet, kind, and patient, who had given her shelter when she had nothing. Daniel, he was the one who had held her hand in the hospital, who had promised to protect her and her unborn child. He had raised Noah as his own for the first years, never asking for more than her trust. But Daniel had secrets of his own, secrets that could destroy everything if Ethan dug too deep. And Ethan was already digging. He had people tracing hospital records, searching old addresses, unearthing everything connected to that night. The more he uncovered, the more he realized nothing added up. The hospital files were incomplete, signatures missing, one nurse mysteriously transferred right after the incident. Then, one name surfaced again and again. Daniel Hart. Ethan's gut twisted. He knew that name, an investor, a quiet philanthropist, someone who had once competed with him years ago in business. It couldn't be coincidence. As Ethan sat in his office, staring at the photo his investigator had just handed him, a picture of Daniel, Lila, and Noah at a small community fair, his chest filled with a mix of rage and disbelief. Daniel had taken his family. And now, Ethan wanted them back. But what he didn't know, was that Daniel was watching him too. From the shadows. Ethan's world felt like it was spinning faster than his mind could keep up. Every revelation, every whisper of the past, twisted deeper into him like a blade. Daniel Hart, the man who had taken in his wife, raised his son, lived the life that should have been his. The name echoed through Ethan's thoughts like thunder rolling over the sea. For nights, he couldn't sleep. He'd sit alone in his study, whiskey untouched, staring at the photo, Lila smiling faintly beside Daniel, Noah holding a balloon, his laughter frozen in that single image. They looked like a family. A happy one. It burned in his chest, that kind of pain that didn't just ache, it consumed. But underneath the fire of jealousy and guilt, another emotion began to grow, determination. This time, Ethan wasn't going to destroy everything with his anger. He was going to fight, not as the man he used to be, but as the one who had finally learned what love really meant. The next morning, he went to Daniel's estate. It wasn't hard to find, Daniel was the kind of man whose success quietly filled every corner of his life. When Ethan arrived, Daniel was in the garden, trimming a rosebush. Calm. Composed. As if the world belonged to him. "Ethan Cole," Daniel said, looking up with a faint smile. "I wondered when you'd show up." Ethan's jaw tightened. "You know why I'm here?" Daniel nodded slowly, setting his gloves aside. "Yes. About Lila. About Noah." "Don't say his name like that," Ethan snapped. He's my son. Daniel met his glare evenly. He's the boy you left to die. The word struck harder than Ethan expected. For a moment, all the noise in his head fell silent. He swallowed the bitterness rising in his throat. I didn't know, Ethan said quietly. I thought they were gone. I thought I'd lost everything. And what would you have done if you knew? Daniel's voice was calm, but there was steel beneath it. Would you have changed? Would you have been the man they deserved? Ethan didn't answer. The truth was written in his silence. Daniel sighed, wiping his hands. You think I took them from you. But I didn't. You handed them over the moment you let your pride blind you. Maybe, Ethan said, his voice low. But I'm here now. And I want to make it right. Daniel studied him for a long moment, then gave a small, almost pitying smile. If you truly want that, then don't destroy the peace they finally found. Ethan stared at him. You think I'm just going to walk away? I think, Daniel said, turning back to his roses, that if you truly love them, you'll stop making them bleed. The wind stirred between them, carrying the scent of roses and rain. For the first time, Ethan saw the truth in Daniel's eyes, not rivalry, not victory, but understanding. This man had picked up what Ethan had shattered. He hadn't stolen, he had saved. But love, real love, is rarely rational. Ethan left that day torn between guilt and longing. He told himself he'd stay away. He told himself that if they were happy, that was enough. But something deeper inside him refused to let go. Then came the night that changed everything. A storm swept through the city, fierce and unforgiving. Lightning split the sky as Ethan drove, his mind restless. He hadn't meant to go to their apartment, but instinct led him there. As he parked across the street, he saw smoke, faint, curling from the window. His heart stopped. Without thinking, he ran. Flames were already licking up the side of the building, neighbors shouting, sirens wailing in the distance. He didn't hesitate, he ran inside, through the smoke and heat, searching for them. He found Lila first, coughing, trying to reach Noah's room through the thick haze. Lila, he shouted, grabbing her arm. Her eyes widened in shock. Ethan. What are you? No time, he coughed, pulling her along. Where's Noah? She pointed toward the hallway. He's inside. The door won't open. Ethan didn't think. He kicked the door once, twice, the third time it gave way. The flames were close now, roaring like a monster in the walls. Noah was crouched in the corner, crying. Ethan rushed in, scooping him up in his arms. It's okay, he whispered hoarsely. I've got you. He turned back, shielding the boy as debris fell, smoke thick around them. He stumbled into the hallway where Lila was waiting, her hand trembling as she reached for Noah. Together, they pushed through the heat, down the stairs, out into the storm. By the time the fire trucks arrived, they were soaked in rain, coughing but alive. Lila sat on the curb, clutching Noah, tears and soot streaking her face. Ethan stood beside them, chest heaving, his clothes scorched. When she finally looked up at him, something changed in her eyes. The fury that had once lived there was gone, replaced by something softer, more complicated. Why did you come? She asked quietly. Ethan's voice cracked. Because I couldn't not. She didn't respond, just looked down at Noah, sleeping against her chest. Daniel arrived minutes later, rushing through the crowd, relief flooding his face when he saw them safe. But when he noticed Ethan, standing beside them, something flickered in his expression, not anger, but respect. Thank you, Daniel said simply. Ethan nodded, unable to speak. He turned to walk away, rain dripping from his hair, each step heavier than the last. He had done what he came for. He had saved them, not to reclaim them, but to redeem himself. But before he reached his car, he heard Lila's voice. Ethan. He turned. She was standing in the rain, holding Noah's hand. Her eyes glistened with tears. "He should know," she said softly. "He deserves to know who you are." Ethan froze, the words sinking in like sunlight breaking through cloud. Lila crouched beside Noah, whispering gently. The boy looked up at Ethan, blinking through the rain. "You're the man who saved me," he said innocently. Ethan smiled faintly. "Something like that." Lila's voice trembled. "Noah, this is your father." The world seemed to pause. Noah looked at Ethan, really looked, and then stepped forward, wrapping his small arms around him. "You came for me," he whispered. Ethan felt something break open inside him, a warmth he hadn't known in years. He held his son close, his heart finally quiet. Lila watched them, tears falling freely, but this time they weren't of pain. They were release. Daniel approached, placing a gentle hand on Lila's shoulder. "You've got a chance now," he said quietly. "All of you. Don't waste it." Ethan nodded, still holding Noah. For the first time, there was no bitterness between the three of them, only truth. In the weeks that followed, things didn't magically fix themselves. There were wounds that couldn't simply vanish, trust that had to be rebuilt from ashes. But slowly, the walls began to fall. Ethan visited often, learning how to be a father, clumsy, uncertain, but present. Sometimes he'd find Lila watching from the window, a faint smile on her lips. She didn't forgive him all at once, some things take time, but she saw the man he was trying to become, and that mattered more than the man he had been. Daniel remained part of their lives too, quietly stepping back but never truly gone. He had been the bridge that carried them through the storm, and for that, Ethan would always be grateful. One evening, months later, the three of them stood together at a park, Ethan, Lila, and Noah, watching the sunset paint the sky gold. Noah pointed to the horizon, laughing, and Ethan lifted him onto his shoulders. Lila looked at them, then at the fading sun. "You know," she whispered, "for years I thought everything that burned was lost forever." Ethan glanced at her. "And now?" She smiled faintly. "Now I know some fires don't destroy, they forge." The light caught her eyes, and for the first time in a long, long time, Ethan smiled too. Not because he'd gotten back what he lost. But because, finally, he'd learned how to deserve it.